Okay, good morning everyone. So I'm Jude Salinas, a PhD student under Professor Lauren Chang of National Central University. And I'd like to talk about our recent work here on the local time variations of the low latitude, low return atmospheric saber CO2 during equinoctial solar minimum. So this work is motivated by numerous studies showing the sensitivity of the linear trend in saber CO2 to its sampling pattern. I believe this was already alluded to numerous times during the past few days. So here again, the work by Yu et al. Showed that the relative trend of saber CO2 above 95 kilometers is higher than the one at the surface. Chen et al. In 2017 found that this higher trend was just a result of some unexpected and therefore unaccounted for irregularities in the sampling. An interesting implication of all of this is that there is apparently a local time dependence in saber CO2. Now, local time dependencies in the MLK region are well known to be controlled by a wide spectrum of atmospheric tides. Saber has already provided us with a wealth of information on these migrating and non-migrating tides. However, these were mostly using temperature observations. And so while a lot of work has been done to understand the local time variation of temperature in the region, nobody has yet presented and of course explained the local time variation of CO2 in this region. And so this work will aim to present, explain, and model the local time variation of low latitude, low return atmospheric saber CO2 during equinoctial solar minimum. We will then try to relate this with the local time variations in saber temperature. We want to do this because we want to assess the consistency of the local time variabilities that these CO2 observations are showing with the local time variabilities that these much more well-known saber temperatures are showing. So when working with local time variabilities in tides, it's always important to assess the sampling of your observations. So here I show the sampling of saber CO2 for 60 days, 2 months, March and April 2008. So this plot shows the local time at each data point. This one shows the CO2 concentration at each data point. Here we see that, so saber CO2 is only during daytime, and we want to find regions where there's good coverage throughout the day. And this plot here shows that over the low latitudes, we get good coverage from 6 a.m. all the way to 6 p.m. This becomes even more apparent if we take the data points here and plot them as longitude and local time. So here we see again that there's good coverage throughout the day. This work, and so because of that, this work will then only focus on the low latitude equinox. This work will also focus on the altitudes between 95 and 100 kilometers because this is where those trend issues started coming up. Now, unfortunately, with the lack of nighttime data, we still cannot use the least squares fit that we're always using for tidal studies. What we opt to do instead is, so we bin the data into local time, and then we average across all longitudes. What this does, it effectively cancels out the numerous non-migrating tides, leaving us with the migrating tides. And we know that of the migrating tides, there's really only two that's very dominant in this region. That is the diurnal DW1 tide and the semi-diurnal SW2 tide. Okay, so this work will also use some model outputs. So here we used SD-WACAM, so March 2008 outputs. We also used some time PCM runs. So we ran time PCM at double resolution to make sure to reduce as much as we can numerical damping in the tides. We ran it for day 80 under solar minimum conditions with the lower boundary specified by GSW and migrating tides. So here now I show the local time variation of the saber CO2 over the low latitude, low return atmosphere between 95 and 100 kilometers. So this plot here shows the local time changes in CO2 that saber is observing for this region and this altitude. So we see that there's a local minimum in the morning and a local maximum in the afternoon. This plot shows what time GCM is modeling, and we see that it's opposite. We can also see that the zonal mean of time GCM is quite higher than what saber is showing. Now, modifying a model like time GCM is very difficult because it is a three-dimensional general circulation model. However, we can at least try to determine what are the parameters in the model that would be worth eventually improving. To do that, we do a tendency analysis involving the continuity equation. So what we're trying to do here is, so in time GCM and in most models, CO2 is just simulated using the continuity equation. So here the equation shows that the changes in CO2 is driven by, this is horizontal advection, vertical advection, eddy diffusion, and molecular diffusion. So what we're going to do is calculate each of these terms to determine which process is most dominant. And then we're going to try to see if we can actually construct a much more simplified transport model for this very specific region. So this shows the tendency analysis. So this shows the time rate of change, so partial V, partial T for CO2. That's the first term in the equation. And these are the three, I grouped them. So this one shows the vertical advection, horizontal advection, and the eddy-molecular diffusion. Between first the advection terms and diffusion, we see that the diffusion terms the values are much lower. And so between these two, though, horizontal and vertical, we see that it is vertical advection that has the strongest magnitude, and also its changes are very similar to what we're seeing with the changes in CO2. So it is from this that we can say with confidence that definitely looks like vertical advection is the most strongest transport process that's controlling these local time changes in CO2. So we take advantage of that to try and construct a much more simplified transport model. So what our model does is, so we have an initial unperturbed CO2 profile, and then we perturb it according to this equation. So all perturbations will be controlled solely by the vertical velocity. So for what we ran here, so our initial unperturbed profile is from SD Wacom, because we compared it with time VCM and saw that the scale mean is much closer to that of Sabre. Then we took the vertical velocity profiles from time VCM, decomposed them into its mean and migrating tides, DW1 and SW2, and then we adjusted those accordingly. Now these adjustments aren't final, these are just so far the best that I can come up with. So the DW1 amplitudes in what I will show, its amplitude was not changed. The SW2 though was tripled, which is odd for equinox season. For phase, both phases have to be adjusted to match that phase difference with Sabre. So and the change is minus 5 over 2 for DW1, minus 2 pi over 2 for SW2. So here again, so this is Sabre, so there's the local minimum in the morning and the local maximum in the afternoon. This now is the result of our the calculation that we did. So now we're able to reproduce the local minimum in the morning and the local maximum in the afternoon. So clearly there is a local time variation in CO2, and then we were able to simulate it by changing the migrating tides to vertical velocity. So now we're going to control the temperature again, because we want to assess whether the local time variabilities that one is adjusting is consistent with Sabre temperatures, which is much more well known. We will do that using vertical velocity. We connect the two using vertical velocity. So here, Ward et al. 1999 and Overhead et al. 2003 are some studies that attempted to relate the tidal motions, tidal effects in temperature to that in vertical velocity. However, they caution that it's always worth checking whether this assumption will hold true for whatever region you're looking at. And so we check that we do exactly that. So this shows the local time variation of Sabre temperature. Here it shows the maximum in the morning and the minimum in the afternoon. Time GCM shows the opposite. But still, we can still use time GCM to try and assess whether for this region that assumption holds. So to do that, we're going to do another tendency analysis, but this time using the thermodynamic equation. So the equation shows that the changes in temperature are controlled by horizontal advection, vertical motion, and numerous sources of diabatic heating or cooling. What we're going to try to do again here is see just how important this term is, S sub B, static stability, and vertical velocity. So this shows the analysis. So this again is just the dT, the first term in that equation. This shows the changes of temperature due to horizontal advection. This one due to vertical motion, so the adiabatic heating and cooling terms. And for the sources, so there's numerous sources for diabatic heating and cooling. The one most relevant to us, of course, here is CO2 cooling, so I show it here. So of the three, CO2 cooling, the values are clearly much lower than these two, and between these two, it's vertical motion that's dominating. So this now gives us confidence in that assumption that we had earlier. So clearly that assumption is looking acceptable. So again, what we're now going to do is, so we're going to take that vertical velocity that Sabre CO2 is suggesting, and we're going to see what temperature changes it would drive, and compare it with that of Sabre and see the consistency between the two. Now the other term here, static stability, can actually just be easily calculated from Sabre temperature. So this is, so these are now the results. So again, this is just Sabre temperature. Local maximum in the morning, local minimum in the afternoon. This is now what temperature changes would be if we took that vertical velocity that CO2 is showing and plugged it in. Note, however, here that I did not yet correct static stability, but interestingly, even with just vertical velocity, the local maximum in the morning was already captured and the local minimum in the afternoon. This plot shows how it would be if we only corrected static stability, and as we can see here that it's still quite far off. This now shows how the temperature changes would be if we took both into account. So the saber CO2 vertical velocity and the static stability. And you can see it's remarkably quite similar to that of saber temperatures. So with this consistency, we now have more confidence in saying that there is good consistency between the saber CO2 local time variabilities and the saber temperature local time variabilities. And with that, we have more confidence now to definitely say that the local time variations in CO2 in this region are significant enough to always be carefully accounted for in long-term trend calculations. Interestingly enough, it's actually not just in local and in long-term trend that this is important. This is actually also important in the retrieval algorithm of saber temperature. Currently, the algorithm does not account for a local time, or it assumes no local time changes in CO2. And I guess what our work is suggesting is that it may be worth revisiting that algorithm at least above 95 kilometers. This work also shows that in understanding changes in the MO3 region, it's very important to start really looking closer at vertical velocity. So here, this is a plot from Solomon et al. 2015. This is just numerous, one of numerous studies showing some very peculiar behavior of the MO3 long-term change. And so what we're suggesting here is, because we showed that CO2 cooling does not apparently contribute as much, or the contraction, which is S sub P, is not really important. Vertical velocity should be looked at closer. So in summary, saber CO2 does have a local time minimum in the morning, a local maximum in the afternoon, and it's controlled by downward advection in the morning and upward advection in the afternoon. We show that those advection processes are also capable of controlling the saber temperature local time variations. And so with the consistency between saber CO2 and temperature, we now conclude that there is local time variation in saber CO2 that is significant. So just to acknowledge the workshop for the financial support, and of course our Minister of Science and Technology. And so this work was done in part at NCAR last summer, so I acknowledge them for funding and hosting me last summer. Thank you.
Okay, very nice. Thank you so much. We have time for a couple questions. Nice work, Jim. Just I want to add on that. So the accounting for the local time variation is important for any trend studies using local using satellite data or ground-based data. So for any trend studies.
Do you use the temperature that was retrieved simultaneously with the CO2?
Yes.
So that one would already account for the local time changes in CO2. But the standard temperature for saber assumes a fixed CO2. So the Remsburg paper that reference was referring to the standard one, which does not take into account anything about the observations of CO2. It's all based on models. So yeah, it's complicated. It would be interesting to compare the two temperatures.
I actually did. I just plotted the one simultaneous with CO2 here. Yeah, there's some differences, slight similarities also. So I think I compared it with the 1.07 version or version 2.1. But I looked at also the one with full local time coverage, and yeah, there's some differences.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll go on now. The next talk of this session. This talk is by Ruth et al. And it is called The Development of the Comprehensive Light